Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Jump City. The time has come. The prophecy shall be fulfilled. Tonight at dusk, when the planets align, the portal will be open. The deep demonic voice of Trigiant echoed out in the depths of his subterranean lair, Slade kneeling down as his master spoke. Finally I shall be free of this prison, and the earth shall be mine. Trigun then declared, and Kyuubi opened its eyes in the depths of the earth, narrowing them onto Trigun dangerously. You mean we will be free, and the earth will be ours? Kyuubi growled out at the four-eyed demon, causing him to wince. Yes, of course, do forgive me, but I have been waiting for this day patiently for over 18 years. Trigun reminded, and Kyuubi snorted while narrowing his eyes onto the other demon, a cruel grin crossing his face as he did. Oh, don't worry Trigun, you'll have your freedom for a time you ha. Kyuubi thought to himself as he watched Slade lift his head to look at Trigun. I will make sure that Raven realizes her destiny. Slade declared while looking to the familiar stone with the S-shaped rune emblazoned on its surface. And in exchange for bringing you your precious gem, I expect you to keep your end of the bargain and return what is precious to me. Slade replied while looking above the stone to the four crimson red eyes that seemed to float in midair. You will bring us the gem, and you will get what you deserve. Trigun replied while causing dozens of S-shaped runes to encircle the massive room he lay within. Deal. Slade agreed while standing up, Kyuubi grinning darkly behind the man as he narrowed his crimson red eyes onto his back. Foolish ninja, don't you know the first rule of working with a demon of any kind? They always stab you in the back. Kyuubi thought to himself, a dark chuckle echoing from his throat as he watched on silently. It's a beautiful day for the end of the world, Slade declared before suddenly vanishing in a burst of fire. The day was finally upon them. The time for freedom had finally come. Titan's Tower. The sun slowly rose upon the horizon, its warming rays filtering into the room of the dark Titania herself, Raven. The sun soon raised up high enough to completely blanket the girl in a warming aura, her face scrunching up as it did. Why does the sun have to be so? She started to think until her eyes bolted open as a strange feeling welled up within her, one she was becoming increasingly familiar with. Throwing her covers back, Raven sat up and looked down at her body in shock, upon seeing dozens of familiar crimson red runes were covering her body. No? She half whispered in horror upon realizing what the markings meant. Closing her eyes as she did, the girl then bowed her head in defeat, already well aware of what would happen today on October 10th of all days, shaking her head. Raven then looked around before getting out of bed and quickly pulling on her things. Finishing with her usual blue cloak, Raven then flew up and phased through the ceiling, soon coming out onto the roof. Letting out a sigh as she saw the still rising sun, the violet-haired teen made her way over to the edge of the tower, and looked to the rising sun silently. I wonder, would a fall from this height be enough to kill me? Raven briefly wondered while looking at the runes on her arms, considering it only for the fact it would be preferable to the utter destruction of all life on the entire planet. What are you doing up so early? Nightwing questioned as he walked up from behind the girl with a slight smile on his face. I could ask you the same thing. Raven replied demurely, eyes closed and her body covered by her long cloak. I love sunrise. The promise of a new day, anything's possible. Nightwing replied simply, and Raven gazed over towards her leader for a brief moment. You always so cheery this early? The violet-haired Titania asked, and Nightwing smirked slightly to himself. Pretty much. He replied honestly while crossing her arms over his chest, causing Raven to look to the side. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. He noted mostly to himself, and Raven lowered her eyes and sighed softly. Yeah. She whispered quietly and then had a thought cross her mind. If this is going to be the last day for everyone, I should at least make it special for my friends and those closest to me. She thought to herself before breathing lightly and turning to Nightwing with a small smile across her face. Hungry? She asked, the slightest uplift to her usual tone, drawing the Dark Squire's immediate attention away from the slowly rising sun. Tartarus HQ. Naruto grunted as he walked out of his room with a deep scowl across his face, muttering something under his breath as he crossed his arms over his chest. Oddly, he was wearing the Omega X suit today, the helmet having broken apart and slid to cover the back of his head. Not only did this leave his face completely viewable, but it also allowed the scowl on Naruto's face to be seen by all. Oddly, he was wearing a pair of dark sunglasses over his eyes, and a long tattered black trench coat with the sleeves rolled up past his elbows, his usual twin ninjutsu stationed on his back. Hey, Temp. Mammoth greeted with a slight raise of his hand only to get an angered grunt in response as the blonde walked past him. Blinking for a moment, Mammoth opened his eyes and looked back to where the blonde was making his way towards Ops. Blinking at the inexplicable rage he was sensing from his normally carefree leader, Mammoth raised a brow before walking towards Gizmo's shop to see if he'd know why Naruto was so pissed. In Ops, Twyla was happily bobbing her head from side to side while sitting at the table where some syrup-soaked pancakes rested, only to blink when she felt some seriously bad vibes heading towards her. Looking to the door, Twyla raised a brow as the pissed-off-looking Naruto walked into the room. "Hey boss man, why you looking so pissed?" Twyla asked with a tilt of her head, Naruto snapping his eyes over to the red-haired girl and growling lightly. October 10th. He replied in a low growl while walking past the redhead and sat on the sofa, the scowl never leaving his features as he turned on the TV and started to look for something to watch. Blinking for a moment, Twyla scratched her head as she tried to remember why that day sounded significant. Snapping her fingers a moment later when she remembered it was the blonde-haired youth's birthday, Twyla then stopped and a wide grin crossed her features. "Cool," she exclaimed while running out of the room, right past Jinx who shivered slightly as the clown girl passed. Running down the hall, Twyla then slid to a halt when the doorbell was rang and looked around. "I'll get it," she exclaimed loudly before running to the door and opening it up, only to blink upon seeing no one there. Looking down and half expecting a baby, she was pleasantly surprised to see a small satchel with a note attached to it. Picking up the sack, Twyla then opened up the note and read it to herself. "Here's something to help in the coming storm, one for all but the strongest of you, so that you may remain safe." Will read aloud and Nude while looking at the back, then opened it up with a grin, only to tilt her head when she saw several familiar gold rings with red lettering on the band. Weird, oh well, might as well give these to the guys. Will mused to herself while turning around and made her way further into the HQ, looking for the other members of Tartarus. Meanwhile, just shook her head when Will was gone. Jinx then walked into Ops and over to the sofa. Flipping over the back of the sofa, the pink-haired girl sat down with a light sigh. Closing her eyes for a moment, she only then noticed a slight wait to the side and looked over at Naruto in surprise for a moment. Seeing the angry scowl that was stretched across his features, the girl mentally shifted a bit away from him. Temp, why do you look so pissed?" Jinx questioned, and Naruto merely muttered something under his breath while glaring at the TV, as if it had done something to him recently. "It's October 10th and I want to leave it at that," Naruto replied while glaring at the TV, causing Jinx to briefly remember that it was not only Naruto's birthday, but also the anniversary of his mother's death. Shifting uncomfortably at the blonde-haired teen's side for a moment, Jinx tried to think of something that wouldn't rile the blonde's clearly shortened fuse. "Jinx," Naruto said, breaking the terse silence and causing his pink-haired friend to yelp slightly before looking to him with a raised brow. "I just wanted you to have this for putting up with me and the shit I seem to make you and the guys deal with," Naruto said while reaching into his coat and pulled out a long string of beads, all of the beads being an off-brown save only for the largest of them, which was ivory in color with a red swirl on it. Taking the beads, Jinx raised a brow at the length of the string, as she was easily able to encircle her entire arm with them. "Prayer beads?" she questioned of the blonde with a raised brow, and Naruto cleared his throat while rubbing the underside of his nose. "Oh yeah, my mom gave them to me when I was really little. Said that no matter what, so long as I kept them with me, no one would be able to harm me. Unfortunately, I kind of sealed them after that and put them under one of the floorboards of our place, so I didn't have it with me for the longest time," Naruto admitted uncomfortably while Jinx's eyes bolted open and she stared at the blonde for a moment. "Wait, then why don't you give them to Raven?" she asked the blonde in surprise, and an uncomfortable look crossed Naruto's face. "The thing about that, they kind of burn her," Naruto admitted uncomfortably while rubbing his biceps, and Jinx raised a brow, wondering when he figured that out. "I might have taken one of the beads off of it and touched Kara-chan with it. Clearly, she didn't like the results. My mom always said the string of beads is a kamikaze in English," Naruto started to say, but Jinx grimaced, as she was easily able to translate that word for him. "Meaning that it's a holy artifact, and Raven is about as far from holy as they come," Jinx realized before looking to the ancient relic in her hand, and Naruto nodded his head reluctantly. "But where did your mom get something like this? If it really is a kamikaze, and if I didn't know better, I'd almost say it was the Yasukani no Magatama," Jinx questioned of the blonde while looking to the prayer beads, wrapping them around her arm enough times to make 3x along the underside of her forearm. "I think mom once said she found the beads individually over the years, and then made the string herself," Naruto admitted with a shrug of his shoulders, and Jinx raised a brow, finding it odd for someone to look for a bunch of stray beads that were just lying around. "Well, in any case, thanks temp," Jinx then offered with a smile, and Naruto waved it off while looking back to the TV silently. Looking down to the ivory bead upon the string for a moment, Jinx then bit her lip before sighing. Turning to her blonde-haired friend, she smiled slightly and leaned over to him. "Still, I don't see why you'd give something like this to me. I thought you liked to collect things. Besides, aren't I supposed to be the one giving you something today?" Jinx reminded with a slight smirk on her lips, and Naruto blushed slightly before rubbing his nose. "Yeah, well, you put up with me and my quirks for so long. I mean, just look at the hell I put you through. I'm dating a titan who's supposed to be your enemy. I've pretty much taken control of this entire group and turned us into mercs without really talking to you or the guys about it." Admittedly, you guys don't seem to mind, but I've also repeatedly caused more than a little hell in the form of the shinobi, Harley and Ivy, that freaky transformation of mine, now Slade, and who knows what else. Naruto replied, and Jinx shrugged her shoulders while fingering the string of beads on her right forearm lightly. Come on Temp, you've been there to help all of us. You've given Gizmo someone who always uses his weapons and tech. You've given Mammoth a friend he can rely on when he can't turn to others. Given Private Hive, Seymour, Kid, and even Whale at home. You've saved Billy from the Joker himself. Taken in Donnie as your apprentice to help her grow. And even fought off the Titans on your own to help Blackfire. And sure, you boss us around, but that's what a leader does, and you do it well. Jinx stated while poking the blonde-haired boy in his chest, Naruto merely smiling slightly in response. Sure, and I bet putting up with Raven, since she is essentially our enemy, has been a piece of cake for you guys as well. Naruto retorted, and Jinx nodded her head lightly, admitting that was a bit of a problem, as the others were becoming more than a little used to Raven, as a result of her near-constant presence around the HQ. Okay, you got me there. Jinx admitted before crossing her arms over her chest. However, thanks to that job we pulled in the mall with Harley and Ivy, we really haven't been strapped for cash as of late, so that's not much of a problem. Besides that, Giz has been sending the guys out on small missions for the last couple of months, easy little things we figured no one could screw up. But it's still making us all more than enough to keep us going for a long time. Jinx explained, and Naruto blinked for a moment while leaning back on the sofa, a thoughtful expression crossing his features. So that's how we keep going without doing any big jobs. Should have known Giz would want a steady income. He's anal about that kind of thing. Naruto mused to himself before sighing as he leaned back in his seat once more. Okay, that makes sense, but do you really want me to take that back? Naruto asked with a sly look on his face, and Jinx chuckled nervously before whistling innocently. Me? No, I like it. Jinx replied, and Naruto rolled his eyes while leaning back and closing his eyes. Watching the blonde for a moment, Jinx fingered the string of beads once more before mentally sighing, as she tried to come up with another conversation starter. So Temp, how's your training been going lately? Jinx questioned of her blonde friend, and Naruto mumbled something under his breath while crossing his arms behind his neck. So have you really been making a big rain cloud to water your garden for you like Giz has been saying, Temp? Jinx asked, and Naruto's eyes shot open, a nervous grin crossing his face as he turned to the girl. Wah? Why would I do a thing like that? How can you even think I'd do something like that, let alone say I'd abuse my powers in such a silly way? Naruto exclaimed, Jinx frowning when she noticed how defensive he was being about it. Tempest, she stated flatly, and Naruto groaned while hanging his head. Alright, yes, I've been doing that, but in my own defense, I don't get to water my plants all that often lately. Naruto said in his own defense before whistling for a moment as the slightest of smiles crossed his features. It was also a good way for me to learn how to use the rain jutsu in the first place. Naruto added, and Jinx shook her head with an amused look across her face. Temp, you're like a kid with all your powers. Jinx stated and nodded her head, while Naruto reached up to lower his sunglasses to the bridge of his nose and glare at the rosette with a frown. Oh really? And just how am I like a kid? Naruto demanded of his pink-haired friend, and she grinned towards him. Because you use your powers to do your work for you. She replied, and Naruto gaped at her for a moment before thinking about it, frowning when she kind of had a point as he still used Kagebunshin to do maintenance on his weapons while he would train. Yeah, well fine then, I'm a kid with godlike abilities. Naruto stated and nodded his head as if that was that, Jinx snorting before snickering into her hand as Naruto smirked towards her. Justice League Unlimited Watchtower. Batman, Dr. Fate, and Shair Hole sat before a computer, Batman frowning as Dr. Fate typed on the console. It is as we feared, Batman, the time is finally upon us. The planets will align tonight at dusk, and then Dr. Fate left off even while showing a projection of the planets on the screen, Batman's frown turning to a scowl as he saw that they would align within a matter of hours. The end will finally be upon us. Dr. Fate whispered, and Batman leaned forward and stared at a countdown on the screen for a few terse moments. Any luck finding more rings of Azar? Batman questioned, and Dr. Fate shook his head, while Shair crossed her arms over her chest. Then how are we going to fight this menace if we'll be susceptible to his powers? I thought he was planning to turn all mortals to stone once he escaped his prison. Shair questioned of the man, and Dr. Fate silently lowered his head while lacing his fingers together in a thoughtful expression. Only you, Batman, myself, and Etrigan will be able to fight Trigon, should he actually manage to succeed with his plans. I'm afraid I don't have the power to protect any more people, or I risk us all. Batman's Ring of Azar shall keep him safe from this stone spell. Etrigan is not affected by demonic magic, and I shall cast a spell to protect the two of us from its effects. Dr. Fate explained to the winged woman before Batman frowned deeply while looking to the man. That plan is tenuous at best, even your powers have limits. Chances are you'll stop the spell from turning either of you to stone, but drain yourself and be too weak to be of any help to us in the main battle with Trigon himself. Batman reminded the helmeted man flatly, and Dr. Fate silently nodded his head in agreement. True, but hopefully Shair's anti-H metal mace will be an adequate weapon to combat Trigon. He may be a demon, but as we all know from past experience, her mace can do tremendous damage to otherworldly creatures and the like. Dr. Fate reminds, and Batman nodded his head, being well aware of just how damaging her mace would be to such a being. But what about the other demonic members of the League? Certainly we can call to them for aid. Shair reminded, and Batman shook his head with a deep frown across his face. Unfortunately, no. The League is spread thin at the moment, and each of them is on a mission. Besides that, only Blue Devil is a demonic being, and he's not powerful enough to help us against Trigon. His ability to send souls to hell might help, however Trigon would instantly see him as a threat, and most likely crush him before we had a chance to weaken him sufficiently. Batman replied casually as always, Shair frowning to herself, while Dr. Fate continued his work on the console for only a moment longer before sitting up. It's almost time we best be off. The Titans along with Jason created a containment room in their tower for Raven. It should keep anything demonic from getting to her and allowing us some small chance of protecting her and keeping Trigon from entering our world altogether. Dr. Fate explained, and Batman nodded his head while turning and walking out of the room, Shair and Dr. Fate following behind the Dark Knight as he made his way to the transport room. Tartarus HQ. What do you mean it's Temp's birthday? Gizmo demanded loudly while Dwayne snickered slightly at the face he was making. After remembering it was her leader's birthday, and somehow hearing Jinx's little speech from the author, Jinx decided she needed to get everyone together to give the blonde a party. Thus, she'd literally dragged everyone to the Hollow Room, and then explained the situation to them. Well, Tarnation, why didn't he tell us about his birthday? Billy wondered aloud, his clones nodding in agreement with him. Yeah, we could have gotten Algrim to stop by with one of his presents. One of the clones suggested only for two of the clones to jump on it and start trying to shut it up, visibly pale and with white eyes. While totally ignoring the random statement from Billy. I still have to agree with him, how come Temp didn't tell us? Mammoth wondered aloud while frowning, and then remembered the sour mood the blonde had been in earlier. And for that matter, why is he so angry today? Mammoth wondered aloud while crossing his arms over his chest, and Will popped up over his shoulder. Maybe he's pissed someone forgot his big day. The redhead suggested and caused Seymour to blink before snapping his fingers. Well, when you think about it, he's closest to Donnie, Jinx, and Raven. Seymour reminded, and they all nodded before looking over to the Gosling girl as she hovered in the air. Blinking for a moment, the dark-haired girl looked around before frowning deeply as they stared at her. What? He didn't tell me it was his birthday, and Will somehow knew about it. Donnie reminded, and the others looked to the clown girl as she blinked for a moment, and then grinned widely. Yeah, he told me and Jinx about it, then mentioned something about being 19 today. Will amused aloud, and the others frowned, as that really didn't make any sense. Okay, so Temp is 19 today, it's his birthday, and he's pissed about something. Gizmo mused aloud while sitting on one of Mammoth's shoulders and rubbing his chin with a frown. What does that tell us? Donnie wondered, and Gizmo held up his finger for a moment, before frowning deeply, as he couldn't think of anything. Nothing really, Jinx would kill herself before forgetting something important about Temp. Gizmo said aloud, getting nods of agreement from the others, as they all knew how Jinx felt about the, as Donnie often called him, clueless blonde. And Raven can't always escape her team to visit, or I'm sure she'd be here as well. Gizmo then added, and Private Hive snorted while crossing his arms over his chest. Don't know about you Magus, but I think she'd be better off changing camps to her side. She fits in better, we don't ask questions, and it's not like we really do much thievery lately, though personally the mercenary work we do is really more my speed. PH stated with a nod of his head, getting some agreements from around the room, while Dwayla shook her head with a smirk. She doesn't want to be evil because she's half demon already. Dwayla stated simply and got the attention of those in the room. What, wasn't it obvious? Dwayla asked and got shakes of the head as her response from all but Kid Wicket, the grey-skinned teen rubbing his face with a frown. Boy, in any case we still have the problem of it being Sensei's birthday, he's unhappy, and we're just sitting around doing nothing. Donnie stated while glaring at the others around the room, Gizmo nodding his head. For once I'm with the bitch. Temp's been our leader and friend since day one. When we needed someone to help he was there. So let's put together the biggest bash in history. Gizmo cried with a grin, the guys whooping in agreement save a silent Kid Wicket who merely nodded his head. Now then we need to spread out and get everything ready quick. Gizmo stated only for Dwayla to snap her fingers and fish around in her backpack, pulling out a sack after she did. Oh yeah, and I found these on our doorstep. Dwayla added while fishing out a familiar gold ring with glowing crimson marks around the band. What do you mean you found them? People don't just leave jewelry lying around for no good reason, or do they on this place? Blackfire questioned while snatching one of the rings and looking it over with a frown. I mean I found them with a note at our doorstep, there's one for each of us, but the note said not to include it X. Dwayla replied with a grin, and the guys looked to one another before taking hold of the strange rings. Gizmo frowned as he pulled out a scanner and held it up over the ring for a moment, and then narrowed his eyes. I don't know what these are, but these things are putting of a small amount of magical energy. Gizmo noted to himself while flipping the ring in hand, and then stowed it away in his pocket. Hey, did you say left these? Blackfire questioned even as she slipped the ring on and smirked while looking at it. Frowning in thought for a moment, Twyla tried to keep her train of thought, memories, and everything else straight, however failed, and thus shrugged her shoulders. Like I said, I found them with a note, and the note said that they would help with the coming storm or something like that. Twyla replied, and Gizmo looked over to the other members of Tartarus for a moment before they took them as well, and looked at the strange rings. What do you reckon these things are for? I mean, how could they help us with this storm? They just a bunch of rings, and for that matter, who in tarnation left a bunch of silly little rings for us? Billy wondered while looking at the ring with a little too much scrutiny to be normal. Who cares, they're free, remember? Seymour stated while pocketing the ring and got nods of agreement from several of the other members of Tartarus, before Gizmo growled lowly. Alright, enough distractions. Let's get to work already. The tiny Terra cried out, and the rest of Tartarus huddled up and listened to him as he described what they were going to be doing. Jump City. Naruto walked through Jump City, still wearing his Omega X suit, though it is set to stealth mode, his sword sealed away, and his coat worn over top it, and buttoned up in order to give the illusion that he was dressed in an all-black outfit. Sighing softly, the blonde-haired boy adjusted his sunglasses as he walked down the street, a black-red bucket hat over his head as per usual. What to do, what to do? Naruto considered silently even as he made his way through the city, stopping only when he felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Blinking for a moment, Naruto turned to the side and shook his head when he saw a spot of red hair, a spot of green, and a spot of violet all sitting on the upper floor at Domino Pizza. Looks like either Starfire or Donna wanted the last slice. The blonde mused to himself, since whenever either girl wanted the last slice of pizza, they either got it, or there was going to be pain for someone in the very near future. Clicking his tongue for a moment, Naruto then grinned as he jumped onto a streetlight before jumping over to Domino Pizza and landing on the outer rail of the balcony. As such, he couldn't help a slight smile upon seeing the Titan sitting down, Starfire squirting mustard onto a slice of pizza, while Beast Boy and Sai sat crying to the side, both having obviously wanted it for their own. Grinning inwardly, Naruto then raised a hand when Donna and Kid Flash noticed him behind. Raven. You Titans, what brings you out and about today of all days? Naruto questioned with a wave, drawing the teen's attention to him and Raven blinking in surprise. Naruto. What are you doing out? I thought you had issues with today. Raven questioned and Naruto briefly twitched, a slight scowl marring his features. Yeah, well, I decided not to mope around about it. So I'm trying to find something to let out my misplaced aggression on any baddies out of prison I should know about. Naruto asked with a wicked grin across his face, cracking his knuckles ominously as he did, causing Nightwing to roll his eyes and shake his head. You just miss, Plasmus. He replied and Naruto snapped his fingers in mock disappointment, while Beast Boy slipped over to the blonde. Dude, what's with all the black? You finally acting like a real ninja or what? Beast Boy questioned and Naruto knocked him on the head lightly, the green jester yelping and rubbing his head when the older teen did. Nah, I'm in a bad mood and feel like hitting something. Naruto replied with a slight smirk, and Beast Boy chuckled nervously before sliding over to the side. Soon enough Starfire finished her slice of pizza and smiled happily before grabbing Naruto into a hug and grinning at the blonde brightly. Please. You must come with us, friend Naruto. Friend Raven has even suggested that we go and do the hanging out at the park. Starfire exclaimed, causing Naruto to raise a brow, since that was really out of character for Raven. When did I become friend Naruto? The blonde also had to wonder since he wasn't exactly around the bubbly red-haired alien too often. No offense meant to Kara-chan, but isn't that kind of odd? Naruto asked and Starfire considered it for a moment before nodding her head. Yes, I do believe you are correct, but perhaps friend Raven is merely used to us all at long last. Starfire suggested, Raven rolling her eyes at that while Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and considered his options. Option 1, lock myself in my room like I do every year. Option 2, say no, and walk aimlessly around and look for a fight. Option 3, follow them, and at least have Kara-chan's company, while waiting for the inevitable fight to find them. Naruto thought to himself before sighing slightly as he mentally decided that option 3 was really the only choice he had. Fine, I'll come with, besides, knowing you kids I'll end up in a fight soon enough. Naruto said with a nod of his head, Raven mentally groaning, as she knew he was right, they seemed prone to danger after all. Thus the now 18s found themselves walking through the park, Naruto half asleep as he followed the Titans, and was unfortunately bored out of his mind. Why couldn't they do something that would give me something to hit? Seriously, I need to let out my aggression soon or I'm going to go X and attack them for the hell of it. The blonde-haired teen thought to himself, Raven hearing the thought and mentally groaning as she tried to ignore his issues with today. Dude. Beast Boy suddenly exclaimed and Naruto looked to the green teen, only to lightly growl when he saw him hold up a penny. Find a penny, pick it up, something good luck. It's my lucky day. Beast Boy cried out with a grin and started to do a silly dance. Watching the green teen for a moment, Naruto then pinched the bridge of his nose with a frown. Yeah, it's your lucky day and the worst day of my life. Naruto muttered bitterly, Kid Flash blinking when he heard the blonde. What's that mean? Kid Flash questioned while drawing the attention of the other Titans onto the blonde. Feeling them looking to him, Naruto grunted before crossing his arms over his chest with a frown. None of your damn business, Red. He grumbled out and then marched off, Raven sighing as he marched off from the group. Following behind the teen, there was a noticeably terse silence before Cyborg cleared his throat. Anyone up for a game of extreme stank ball after lunch? The metal man questioned while taking a ball made of old sweaty stinky socks out of the drawer on his chest plate. Yeah, sure. Raven allowed with a slight upward lilt to her tone, Naruto stopping in place when he processed what the girl said. As a result, Raven passed him, leaving him with the others staring after the violet-haired girl. But you hate anything extreme? Kid Flash noted with a raised brow, and Beast Boy popped up at his side. Or stanky. The green jester added as more an afterthought than anything else, and Raven stopped, mentally cursing, even as she turned around to look at her friends. Maybe I never gave it a chance. She offered, and Starfire flew up to her from the side with her hands clasped together. Raven, would you still have time to join me in the painting of the toenails later today? Starfire questioned with a smile, and Naruto narrowed his eyes on his girlfriend, already knowing something was seriously wrong with her. Sounds like fun. Raven replied with a slight smile, and Naruto was in front of her faster than the Flash. Poking her on the forehead with a flat look, the blonde-haired teen leaned forward with a frown. Alright, did one of your other personalities take over what? Naruto asked flatly, Beast Boy snickering as Raven gave the blonde a look. No, seriously, even I have to admit you're acting weird, Card-chan. Naruto stated, and Nightwing nodded his head in agreement with the blonde-haired ex-shinobi. Yo, what's up, Raven? Pancakes, pizza, stank ball, toenails. Knight started to list, and Kid Flash decided to drop in his own 2 cents as well. Yeah, and she hasn't called Beast Boy stupid all day. Kid Flash noticed, the green jester nodding his head in agreement with his red-haired friend. I know. Did someone replace Raven with a robot or what? Beast Boy asked while looking to the gray-skinned girl suspiciously. In response to the unwanted attention, Raven flew to the side, her back to the looks she was getting from her friends and of course her boyfriend. I just want everyone to have a nice day today. Raven offered while not allowing any of them to see the downcast look in her violet orbs. Come on, we have a lot to do before sunset. Raven then stated, causing Naruto to raise his brow and wonder when they ever had anything they had to do. However, his attention was then drawn to the sun, as it slowly started to turn black, a frown crossing Naruto's features. I've got a bad feeling about this. Naruto thought to himself as the sun was soon completely blocked out, the sky turning dark as day suddenly became his night. Dude, what's going on? Beast Boy asked with wide eyes while Naruto lunged forward and caught the girl before she could hit the ground, numerous familiar red runes having formed over her body. Is she okay? Nightwing questioned while walking up behind Naruto, however someone else chose to answer him instead. No? Batman stated as he and Sierra walked over to the group from behind, a grim frown upon the Dark Knight's face. Because today is the day. He started only for Raven to finish for him, tears welling up in her eyes. The end of the world. She whispered while allowing her tears to fall at last, a scowl crossing Naruto's features as he held her close. Batman, what are you? Nightwing started to question while the Dark Knight walked over to Raven as Naruto stood up, holding the girl bridal style. Dr. Fate uncovered a date for Trigon's coming. At dusk today, when the planets align, the portal shall be opened. Batman explained simply, and Starfire flew over to the Dark Knight with a worried look on her face. Please, Mr. Man of Bat, is there no way to save friend Raven? The red-haired alien questioned the older hero, and Batman was silent, Sierra eventually answering for him. We don't know yet, she replied, and the alien girl looked to her friend with visible worry, Naruto looking to Batman with a deep frown on his face. I've only got one question. What do we do next? The blonde asked Batman, and the Dark Knight narrowed his eyes before replying. We return to Titan's Tower. Dr. Fate and Jason have finished something that should keep Raven safe for the time being. Batman replied while turning on his heel and marching towards Titan's Tower, followed closely by the Titans and Naruto, unseen by any of them however, and watching on silently from the sky, was 4 eyes belonging to Trigon. Titan's Tower. The Titans, Naruto, and the Justice League Unlimited members with them walked through the halls of Titan's Tower, a frown on Nightwing's face. Okay everyone, just as we planned. The Dark Squire ordered as they wandered deeper into the tower, Raven looking around from Naruto's arms with a confused expression. Where are you taking me? She asked, and he said there was nothing we could do. Nightwing reminded while turning his head to look to his friend, then turned around as they approached the door. We didn't agree, so we've been preparing for this day. Nightwing finished while placing his hand onto a pad at the side of the room, opening up a doorway to a strange room that was predominantly blue, inside of which, Jason and Dr. Fate were putting some finishing touches on the numerous seals lining the strange room. You did all this for me? Raven asked of her friend, clearly touched by the gesture, and Kid Flash smirked. Your friend Raven, of course we'd do all this and probably even more. The speedster replied with a smile, Nightwing nodding his head in agreement. We're ready to defeat Trigon. Nightwing added, and Jason Blood scoffed while walking over to the group with Dr. Fate. We're nowhere near ready for such a thing, Nightwing. To battle an A-class demon such as Trigon requires power which we do not currently have available to us. Jason stated, Dr. Fate nodding his head in agreement with the scarlet-haired man. Perhaps you are right, but hopefully it won't come to that. Our plan is simple. Raven is the portal, she is the key to Trigon's escape. Donna reminded, and Cyborg took over for the Amazonian warrior. So if Trigon can't get to the portal, he can't take over. Cyborg continued, and Starfire took over the explanation from there. So all we must do is keep the Trigon from getting to Raven. Starfire finished with a smile, and Batman thought of roughly a dozen's holes in that plan, while Dr. Fate nodded his head slowly. You can't. Raven said with an exasperated sigh, and Nightwing narrowed his eyes while looking to the girl. We will, and that is what this room is for. Night replied while walking inside, Naruto watching as Dr. Fate shook his head. Yeah, I've equipped only the most state-of-the-art equipment in here. Nothing alive is getting in. Sai explained while walking inside, and Starfire smiled while floating over to Raven and Naruto. And the symbols Mr. Blood found in your books shall hopefully keep out everything else. Starfire finished and Raven looked skeptical for a moment, Dr. Fate deciding to speak up at that moment. This room shall protect Raven so long as she is inside of it, yes. Dr. Fate admitted, but then looked to the violet-haired girl stoically. However, should she leave it of her own accord, it will do her little good, and we shall find ourselves with little choice but to battle the beast himself. Dr. Fate reminded the teens, and Naruto rolled his eyes while putting Raven back to her feet and letting her walk into the room. Looking around, the violet-haired sorceress looked at the many symbols and seals on the walls before turning to her friends. This is all great, but it's not going to make a difference. Raven stated while turning and walking towards the back of the room. Today the prophecy will be fulfilled. Trigon is coming, there's no stopping him. Raven stated softly, eyes closed, and Naruto frowned deeply. However, before he could speak, Nightwing walked forward, a determined look across his face. There's never been a villain we couldn't stop before. Night stated, and Raven shook her head solemnly while turning to her eyes towards her leader. Trigon isn't a villain, he is the incarnation of evil, the source of all darkness. Raven tried to say, only for Naruto to stop her with a frown across his face. I don't care if he's an even bigger pain in the ass than Madara was. If this fucker thinks he's touching you with me around, he's got another thing coming. The blonde declared with a scowl across his face, Raven shaking her head as she heard her boyfriend. You don't know Trigon, Naruto, he's more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Raven told the blonde, and he scoffed, a sly smirk crossing his features as he looked to the violet-haired girl. Somehow I really doubt that. The blonde replied, and Batman walked forward with a frown across his face. In any case, we should head out. Stay in here, you'll be fine so long as you don't leave the room. We'll be close by on the off chance you need us. Batman stated while turning around, walking out of the room, soon followed by the others. Beast Boy stopping for a moment and then quickly turned around and ran up to Raven. Here. Beast Boy stated while placing something into the girl's open palm. For luck. He explained while rushing out of the room, followed by Naruto. His arms were crossed over his chest as the door to the room slid shut. Opening her hand and looking to what Beast Boy left her, Raven found the penny that the green changeling had found only a short while ago in the park. All the luck in the world won't help us now. Raven said to herself solemnly, then sighed while looking around the room for a moment and leaned back into a wall. Deep beneath the earth's crust, within the tomb, Slade found himself more and more often. The masked madman awaited. Good, Rose has given the rings to Tartarus. No doubt Raven will protect the Titans, and the Justice League Unlimited most likely have ways to protect themselves all, according to plan. The masked man mused to himself while Trigon's eyes suddenly appeared on the wall. The hour is approaching. Slade declared while looking up to Trigon's eyes. The army is ready. He states simply, even as Kyuubi's own eyes open up and peer down at him. You had best perform. Trigon ordered darkly, and Slade rose to his feet while gazing towards both demons. I'll do my job, you better have my payment ready when I get back. The masked madman stated, Trigon's eyes narrowing on him, while Kyuubi twitched. Stupid mortal, to dare make orders of his masters. Kyuubi couldn't help but think to himself, his twin red eyes narrowing as Slade raised his hands upwards. Rise. Slade ordered darkly, the earth bursting open to reveal dozens upon dozens of flaming wraiths, all of the creatures bearing demonic red eyes as they flowed forward. Bring me the portal. Trigon ordered with finality to his words, Slade walking to the front of the army with a dark glare. Warriors, march. Slade cried out to the army and then made his way forward, followed by the army of fire wraiths. Row after row of the beings moving forward until a portal opened before Slade, then stretched out, allowing all of them to march through it. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. and also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.